Kia ora koutou, my name is Polly Griffiths and I'm the Business Sustainability Manager at Sustainability Trust. Welcome to our last but certainly not least of our Your Sustainable Home webinars, our Q&A sessions, and this will be the last one that we'll have for a while. And today we're going to be talking about everything to do with being a conscious consumer. We've already had 7 other sessions now over the last few weeks that have covered growing at home and home energy, and on Wednesday we had a session on litterless lunches and reducing food waste. So if you missed out on any of these, they've all been recorded and you can find them on our website and also our Facebook page, along with blog posts which give you links to loads of other cool resources. So I'm going to start us off today with an opening karakia, whakataka, which you're very welcome to join in with at home. And then I'm going to do a brief bit of housekeeping about how today's session will run, and then introduce you to our fabulous panelists who you can all see here today. So, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hiaki ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti he moriora. And that means cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south, let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean, let the red-tipped dawn come with the sharpened air, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. And I think that's a really lovely message to take us into the weekend, and also as we start to hopefully think towards level 2 as well. So just a brief bit of housekeeping. You'll have noticed that you're on mute, but we really want to hear from you. So start getting your questions in. And the way you can do that is through the Q&A tab. And depending on your device, that's going to be at the top or the bottom of your screen. The other thing is that polling has been switched on for the questions. So if you see a question that you really like, vote for that, and that will kind of take it up the list in terms of priority. This session is going to be recorded along with like all our other sessions, and it will be available later on today or early next week with a blog with lots of other resources. We're going to aim to answer all your questions in the time we've got available, but if there's any that we don't get to, we'll make sure they are covered off in the blog. So today our topic is all about being a conscious consumer, which, let's face it, is pretty hard work when life is at normal, let alone at the moment. And I know that I've had to make some compromises compared to how I would normally be behaving at this time, particularly in relation to zero waste. So I'm really looking forward to a thought-provoking session on how we can all reset our behaviours and create more resilient zero waste systems. Our panel today are both walking the talk, setting up the systems that make it easier for all of us to be conscious consumers, but also working hard to make further changes. And we're really lucky to have them all here today to give us their insights and advice. So on our panel, we have Councillor Laurie Foon from Wellington City Council. We've got Bobby Lloyd, who is co-founder of Reusable, Nada Piatek, founder of Again, and Hannah Bloomhart, who is both from The Rubbish Trip and Takeaway Throwaways. So I am going to hand over to them so they can introduce themselves before we start the Q&A session, and they can also tell us a little bit more about what being a conscious consumer means to them. And so I think I said it would go to Bobby first because he's first on my screen. Over to you, Bobby.
Kia ora everybody, ko Bobby tōku ingoa no te whanganui a tara aho. I'm Bobby Lloyd and I'm living in Wellington. And that's where I am right now, where it's beautiful. So we're really stoked. I am also co-founder of Reusable. Reusable is a alternative packaging supplier supplying a reusable packaging to the restaurants and takeaway retailers of Wellington. We haven't launched yet, so you can follow our journey online after this. I'm sure you'll find links on the website to have a look at that. But today I'm here to talk to you about conscious consumerism, which is something that's come along with the ride of Reusable. It's kind of where I started as a conscious consumer and now into a conscious business. I guess I'll just say a little piece about what conscious consumer, what being a conscious consumer means to me, and then I'll hand off and we can go into the panel. But basically, a conscious consumer to me means understanding the impacts of your consumption completely. So just understanding what you're consuming, where it comes from, what went into making it, who made it, and then where it goes afterwards. So just understanding everything, and therefore making informed decisions about your consumption so that they align with your values.
Cool, thanks, Bobby. I was going to go to Laurie next. Is that okay, Laurie?
Yes, Bobby just gave me a good idea. Ko Laurie Funa hau no whanganui a tara aho as well. So yes, my name is Laurie Foon. I'm in Wellington at the moment. My journey started when in London when I met this lady here. It'll be back to front for you. Anita Roddick founded the Body Shop, who made me understand about the traceability of products and where and how they were made. And I came back to New Zealand and started a fashion business. And from there, I really wanted to understand how that business could have less impact, positive impact on people and less impact on the environment. So through that, we became one of New Zealand's first eco-fashion pioneers. From there, I went to work for the Sustainable Business Network for 5 years. And now, paying for my sins, I am the portfolio holder for the Waste-Free Wellington at Wellington City Council. And talk about big problem solving. I have a landfill as part of the work that I'm doing on looking at how we solve what's going in and how we reduce that. So my brain is going top notch. If we're starting on the conscious consumerism question now, I'll just say that to me, a conscious consumer is someone who uses their purse to really make sure that they understand the origin and the impact everything they are having is having on their environment and as a social impact as well. Kia ora, that's all from me.
Awesome, thanks, Laurie. Nada, over to you.
Thanks, Polly. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Nada Piontek tēnei. Ko hau te kai whakahaere mātua o Again Again. Again Again is a coffee cup share network for takeaway without the throwaway. So we have created access across 188 cafes nationwide, whereby people can choose to borrow a reusable cup from Again Again in those cafes in place of a single-use cup. And when they pay a deposit for it, and when the cup is returned to any of those cafes in the network, then that deposit is refunded. So we are a for-profit social enterprise. We absolutely work in a marketplace, and I guess in that respect, it's about consumerism, but we are really looking to leverage the share economy rather than leave consumers only with the option to consume rather than use. There's already, of course, a will for that. People have been using personal reusable cups now for some time, and that certainly solves part of the problem, but there is still an excessive use of single use, and that's where creating access in a commercial sense helps to tackle the questions around consumerism. It's really exciting to be here. I used to be at Sustainability Trust myself for a couple of years prior to setting up Again Again, which was 2 years ago.
Great, thanks, Nada. Hannah, over to you.
Tēnā koutou e te whānau, ko Hannah toku ingoa I noho au ki Pōneke mō ngā tau e tekau, engari nai nei kei te motu o Waiheke ki te kāinga o Oku Mātua. Kia ora everyone, I'm Hannah, lived in Wellington for 10 years, but right now I'm at my parents' place on Waiheke. I run the rubbish strip with my partner Liam Prince. We travel the whole of New Zealand full time, giving free talks and presentations to whoever wants to listen to us, all about how we household rubbish. We've done about 400 talks in every region, district and city of New Zealand to almost 20,000 people. And all of our talks are based on our own research and experience. We've lived without a rubbish bin for about 5.5 years now. and counting. We also co-founded a campaign called Takeaway Throwaways with Use Your Own Cafe Directory. Takeaway Throwaways is calling on the government to phase out single-use disposable serviceware, so cups, cutlery, plates, containers, all that kind of stuff, and replace them with mandatory reusable schemes at scale, rather than alternative forms of single-use serviceware. So for me, conscious consumerism at its core really is finding ways of living in accordance with your values. For me, that's the crux of it. And for me personally, sometimes or a lot of the time, that actually means not consuming at all, or it means consuming in different ways. And by that, I don't necessarily mean in ways that are marketed as green. I mean, you know, questioning fundamental things that often underlie our consumerism. So the concept of ownership is one big one. And so thinking about how we can move more to consuming services rather than products. So looking at reuse schemes like again, or reuse a bowl, for example. And then that has political implications, because then we need to look at the systems around us that currently aren't set up for that kind of consumerism. And so that's where things get political. So that's me. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. It's really lovely to have you all here today. I feel like we're very privileged to have you all come up and join us and spend your Friday afternoon with us. So we'll get cracking with the questions, and we've started to have a couple come in actually about recycling, and Sue is wondering what the most precious materials we should focus on in terms of recycling. And Laurie, I am going to pass that one over to you to start with.
I can't believe I get to answer this question, because it's all I've been answering for the last 6 weeks, every email I open up.
I know, sorry about that.
It's all good. At least I know that Wellingtonians care. It has been a phenomenal amount of queries to the council on the recycling service. Actually, and Hannah might have to help me with this as well, but my understanding is the opportunity we have with recycling is really looking for systems that we can develop locally that become circular. And so just palming our recycling off to other countries where we don't really understand what is happening to it has proved itself to be not a sustainable long-term solution. But here in New Zealand, where we have got opportunities for those, so my understanding is cardboard is actually very necessary, and we have the capacity to fully recycle that to be reused for packaging for food, as well as many of us will be aware of flight plastics out in Lower Hutt, which they are able to recycle #1 clear plastic. And also precious glass we can also do here locally in New Zealand. But ideally, we really, if we can, don't want to be recycling as it's more of the last stop. As Hannah, I'm going to hand over to you to help me with the prioritising of our R's.
Yeah, well, in terms of precious materials, I think, to make it really basic, it's clear plastic #1, PET, HDPE, preferably not light-proof milk bottles, but clear. So we're always looking for non-pigmented plastics. Pretty much plastic 3 to 7 is a no-go, although plastic #5, polypropylene, that's your ice cream containers and your margarine containers, there may be scope to get that going at scale in New Zealand for recycling that. Glass, yes, and metals, yes, good. And paper and cardboard is a bit of a problem because we only have capacity to recycle 50% of it in New Zealand when it's mixed together at curbside. And so we probably need to also be thinking about composting what we can at home, and trying to include paper and cardboard into our composting facilities. On recycling, can I just say that it's not just about the materials, it's also about the collection methodologies for those materials. Many council curbside recycling collection systems are broken, and they rely on commingling all of the recyclables into the same bins, and that can turn precious recyclable materials into non-precious, non-recyclable materials. A classic example is glass in Christchurch. and to a certain extent in Auckland too, and that's also a problem with our paper and cardboard. So all of these questions is not always an easy answer. And this is part of the reason why when we think about waste reduction, we think about the waste hierarchy, and we try to prevent and reduce waste before we think about recycling. And the realistic, you know, in reality, we're never going to be able to recycle all of our recyclables in New Zealand. Many plastics are really difficult to recycle. And although it's really difficult to think about, we have to start to think about reducing what we bring into our homes. But we also need to be thinking about how, as a society, can we move towards reusing at scale, and what materials are best for that. You know, glass is infinitely recyclable, but it takes enormous amounts of energy and resources to recycle it. Why not just wash it and refill it? But that needs infrastructure to do at scale. So we have to, as a society, start to think a bit more creatively and stop getting so stuck on the recycling thing, because it's not up to individuals to sort this out. We have to be thinking as a society. Thank you.
Cool, awesome. Nada, did you have something you wanted to add?
I'd just like to make a comment. All of this recycling stuff is really important. And it's interesting to see that the large proportion of the questions so far are about recycling. But recycling is so far down the hierarchy of things that you can do to create impact that I think it's worthy of comment that if you want to make impact, stop thinking about recycling as any sort of solution and start getting yourself up that waste hierarchy and into, Hannah, you've got the list, refuse, reuse, you know, it's up there that we need to be making those changes.
Cool. Thanks, Nada. We've got lots of other questions coming in now, not just in recycling. So we can start talking about some of those other actions people can be taking. Casey's asked, what are your top recommendations for an organisation transitioning to becoming carbon neutral? They're looking for maybe a top 3. And I was wondering if Bobby, would you like to kick us off with that one?
Yeah, sure. I also, I'm a sustainability consultant as well, whilst building this company. So that's a good question for me. I guess the first step is measuring it, understanding exactly what you're emitting. You can't try to fix something without knowing what you're doing. You can't, you've got to know what you're doing. And so the first step is to, honestly, it's probably the finance team going, hey, where are we spending our money? Because that's where the carbon is emitted. And then you find out where all the travel's happening, and then you have a look, hey, the first step is committing to reducing all of this. If you go through companies like, a great one is Ecos, actually. They plant native trees, and they also accredit companies. I think, Nada, are you accredited by Ecos? Yeah, they're accredited by Ecos, and we'll look to as well when we're doing it, because I consider them the best. But what they do is they do not work with companies who are not committed to reducing first. So if you're in an organization and you really want to make change, first step, measure it. And then after that, it's probably having a look at strategies to reduce it. So then when you're reducing it, it's things like, I mean, look at what we're doing today. We could have had this in person, but it's awesome. We've got a full virtual workspace and now everyone's used to it. So I think that could be a great example of how we reduce a lot of impact. And then the next one is, if you may have a small bit left over, depending on the size of your company, and then look to a company like Ecos to offset it and accredit you.
Cool. Nada, have you got anything you want to add to that?
I'd just add that people get really freaked out when they think about carbon accounting. They're like, oh, how do we even start with that? And my experience is that it's actually really, really easy, and there's some great tools out there, and you pull most of it off your accounting. So you don't have to go and measure the number of miles that you've driven. You go onto your P&L and look at how much you've spent on petrol. And so it's actually really super easy. And like Robbie said, the first thing you have to do is measure it. Otherwise you're trying to manage something that you actually have no idea about.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Laurie?
And thank you both. And I just add to that there are benefits. One of the reasons, I hate to say this, why I was very motivated about sustainability is actually it meant efficiency, and efficiency meant saving money. So actually you can save money and the planet at the same time by being more efficient. So yes, take that too.
And I also add into, just to co-talk what Nada said about you can't manage what you don't measure. And so for the rubbish trip, when we were looking at reducing our carbon footprint from our travel, because we travel New Zealand full time, it all came from measuring how much we were traveling, and then we could measure the carbon impact, and then from there we could reduce. And it's the exact same thing with waste. We did the same thing. If you don't know, if you're just automatically putting things into the bin and you're not keeping track of what's going in the recycling, what's going in the bin, weighing it, looking at it, it's really hard to measure it. So a lot of people think that they're doing a lot better than they are until they start collecting things. So it sort of goes across the you can't manage what you don't measure is a great concept.
Cool, that's actually a good lead in to the next question, which is really how you can kind of make a start with waste minimisation in the home. They've had a couple of questions around that. So Hannah, would you like to maybe kind of follow on that topic? And they're also looking for kind of ideas where they can go for more resources as well.
Awesome. So the number one thing anybody can do to reduce their waste is to get organic waste out of the bins. So 30 to 50% of most household bins in New Zealand is organic waste, food waste and green waste. So when that goes to landfill, it breaks down anaerobically because there's no oxygen, produces methane and increases leachate, which is toxic coming out of the landfill. So we don't want that in the landfill. So if you can set up a compost, a worm farm, a bokashi system, or see if there's a food or organic waste pickup in your area. And to answer that question about resources, if I share my screen, can you see my screen? Does that come through?
It's just come through now, Hannah.
Cool. So if you go to our website here, you'll find the Rubbish Trip Regional Zero Waste Shopping Guides. On there, we have a community section which lists all of the services in your part of New Zealand that help you to deal with food waste, whether that's subsidised compost bins, a food waste pickup collection you can pay for, community compost where you can drop off your food scraps if you don't have your own system. And those guides too also list everywhere in New Zealand that we know of where you can get zero waste essentials. So where you can shop packaging free, where you can find shampoo bars and conditioner bars, where you can find those bamboo toothbrushes and wooden dish brushes. So if you just want to know where to buy things zero waste and the community services in your area that will help you to reduce waste, feel free to go to those guides. They're also in a map form as well called Zero Waste Spot, and that's all on our website, The Rubbish Trip. So those are probably where I'd start when I'm thinking about resources and reducing waste. Sorry, I'll stop sharing the screen now if I can work out how to do that.
That's all right. I wondered if any of the panel had anything to add in terms of going beyond just zero waste, in terms of looking at other aspects of being a conscious consumer, those resources we can use to help us make better choices. Nada?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have nearly as much organisation in it as Hannah does, but I think some of the resources that are worth looking out for are independently verified qualification marks. So where an international organisation has, and there's plenty of them, has audited and checked that the claims that are being made by a company who are producing something are actually valid and legitimate. And so if you're looking to find goods to use in place of things that you might otherwise currently be using, then looking for those certification marks are a really important part of that.
Cool. Laurie, sorry, I think you had something you wanted to add as well.
I was more back in the zero waste conversation, but so I might just add into that around tips. But I think just joining in with Hannah on the R's is the refuse, but just don't let it in the house. And I've been amazed at how much time I've saved as a mother, you know, the main person in the house that manages the stuff that comes in. If you stop it from coming in, you're saving time on managing the way that it goes out. And so that's been a really useful, just don't bring it in the house. So it's putting the onus back on the people that bring it as well. You're going to have to deal with it. And the other one too would go back to what Bobby was saying really, which was, you know, just picking that one thing at a time as a household. and be it pork or be it eggs, or just being it something that you can have a conversation around and really understand what the organ, where are you getting it from, what are the impacts, and then that goes through a whole household as well. So yeah, so they're my two. Pick one thing at a time and deal with it, change your behavior, and then you pick another thing and go on, and don't let it in the house in the first place.
Bobby, did you want to say something else?
Just to carry on from Laurie, I think on the other side of that too, not letting it in is also right now it's very clear as to what we're consuming, because everyone's at home and their bins are staring them at the face, and you've got recycling piling up and you don't know what to do with it. But when you look at it, you're actually like, oh whoa, there's so many plastic jars with this or glass with this. I mean, in our household, we're actually making a lot of bread and all these different things at the moment, just because of the outrageous amount of we thought we were pretty good, and the amount of waste which is actually just generated. And when it's very clearly visible, especially to the people that may not typically take it out. So I'm thinking, the working person in the household or the children that are now around all the time, they get to see that very visibly in their mind. So not only is it like picking that one thing, but it's also witnessing that whole cycle before you let go of it. Yeah. And it's becoming very clear to some people. So hopefully that's a bit of a silver lining of the situation of seeing it the whole time.
Thanks, everyone.
Quickly jump in again, sorry, to come back to how this ties to conscious consumerism too, is that for most people, apart from the food waste, when most people think about their rubbish bin, they're thinking about packaging, and most of the packaging that households have are associated with their grocery shop. And so, we do often when we travel around talking about zero waste, we'll have people come up to us and they say, but it's impossible because everything in the supermarket is packaged in plastic. And that is your answer right there. If you're shopping in the supermarket, it's really difficult to make substantial inroads into reducing your waste. And so we do encourage people to think about, you're looking at shopping guides or whatever, or talking with people, going to the Zero Waste in New Zealand Facebook page and having a chat and saying, well, what are the alternatives? And often people will say to us the alternatives are too expensive, but that's not always the case. It does depend on where you shop and how you shop. And you can do this on a budget as well as spend heaps of money like anything in life. So thinking about, once you've looked at your rubbish bin and you've worked out what the rubbish is associated with, it's going to very quickly come back to, well, where am I shopping and where else could I go?
Cool. So much that we could just fill the whole session with this one. I think this is a great one that you're all going to have loads to comment on. Someone said it looks like the issue is so much bigger than individual use. So what can we do to push manufacturers and leaders to make broader change? So Nada, would you like to kick us off on that one?
This is I guess a pet soapbox topic of mine. I am deeply in support of all of you who are making personal choices every day. Go you. But I firmly believe that this problem should not rest with the consumer to make better choices. This has to go back to the producers to create better opportunities and better options, so that when people's personal choices are being made, actually the bad options aren't even in there. And if they are in there, at least there's some options which are just fundamentally so much better. So I think it's really, really important. In fact, the top tip that I will share with you in a bit, soon everyone's jumping the gun, is that we have to demand more of our suppliers. And if you keep using your personal reusable cup, keep using your bamboo toothbrush, all of those things are great, but we've kind of gone past the point where those things are going to save the world. We absolutely have to push it up the chain. And instead of choosing to or not to have your fizzy drink in a recyclable bottle, we actually need to start going to the fizzy drink producers and asking them what they are doing about it. So find your inner activist.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to give you all a chance to speak on this, don't worry, but I'll go to Bobby next.
Cool, Nada's absolutely right. We need the superstars like Hannah and Liam showing us what's possible, because they quite simply are superstars of that space. But we also need to demand it. I mean, I think it is frustrating at times knowing that you know, an individual is insignificant compared to these huge companies' impacts, and that is super frustrating. And I understand it because I feel that a lot. But what we can look to is voting, both with our wallet, both with our voices. So one thing that both companies and governments have in common is that they need us to basically make changes and be in power. Companies need demand to meet supply. Like, they need us to demand the things that we want. So if we want a cleaner, greener environment, we need to really demand that. And if we want better systems, we need to demand that. If we want waste-free systems and circular systems, we need to demand it. And then we can actually, sometimes that's a little bit slower, and we can actually, but we can help by voting for the people we want to see in government and council, Laurie, and who are going to push things like this. Because then when we get both teams up who can make the decisions, then we start making radical and rapid movement towards a future we want to see. There's a huge shift right now, and it's really awesome to see. So COVID's a good example of how we can rally together pretty quickly to see something for positive.
I know everyone wants to contribute, so I'll be short, but I would add to that, Bobby. I think you're absolutely bang on the mark. But I think the time has passed to be asking your suppliers for a better option. The time is now to be demanding that your suppliers get rid of the bad options. And so next time you take your personal reusable cup into the cafe, ask them why the hell they've still got single-use cups. Because actually, as a consumer, that is where you can push that upward pressure. And I chose cups because that's my area, but it is across all the industries, you know.
Thanks, Nada. Hannah.
Yes, thank you. So alongside parading around being a zero waste evangelical, I'm also coordinator of the New Zealand Product Stewardship Council. And so product stewardship is the concept of making manufacturers and everybody involved in the life cycle of a product responsible for their waste and the impacts of their products. Because at the moment they're not. And so of course, if a company isn't responsible for the packaging that they put their product into, why would they worry about it? Because at the moment, councils and individuals are responsible for dealing with the mess. So it works really well for them. So we, as the Product Stewardship Council, have been calling on the government to implement mandatory product stewardship schemes. They've had the power to do this under the Waste Minimisation Act since 2008. And since that time, not a single mandatory product stewardship scheme has ever been created. So actually, what we like to remind New Zealanders is that the government already has had the powers to do a lot of the things that we think are important around waste for a very long time and have done nothing. Now, the present government has put out proposal documents about a whole range of possible product stewardship schemes, including single-use plastics for consumer goods, beverage containers, tires, electronic waste, you know, a whole range of other things. And so we really encourage people, when you hear the government using this language around product stewardship, just think, make businesses responsible for their waste, and then say, yes, that's what we want. So that's one thing that you can do to really make a change. And similarly, the Takeaway Throwaways campaign is basically a product stewardship campaign, but we're calling on the government to ban single-use serviceware, but not only ban, create the reusable alternatives at scale. And so this is the thing, it's not enough just to take things away, and it's not enough just to point people to alternatives. We have to do both, because at the moment we have alternatives, but because the single-use option is available, people use it. If you take the single-use option away, but you have no alternative scheme, people get grumpy and everything collapses. So we have to be thinking on both things at the same time. And if you think these things are a good idea, then get behind these campaigns. Takeaway Throwaways, Product Stewardship Council, Greenpeace is about to release a report on refillable beverage containers. So there's all kinds of things that we could be looking at.
Oh, anyone else lost Hannah? I'll hand it over to you, Laurie.
Don't know if I can do it without Hannah. I think for me, just just looking at what's coming into the landfill, that's very heartening reality when you go down and look at a tip face. And the problem that we've got is that getting waste is too cheap. And that is why what Hannah is saying, it's the opposite of just being able to take, make and throw it away. And so the government is also looking at increasing the levy. And Polly, we've had sessions with you when we've seen what Scotland has done, when resources are put into, when the levy for waste goes up, and then all of a sudden it becomes more economical to reuse or find other ways to deal with waste, or just not have it at all. And so this is another incredibly important lever. Our waste is too cheap, and it is not fair that you can just throw away a takeaway cup and you get no tax on that whatsoever. You don't even notice that you've had to pay for it. So this system has got to stop, and we need to implement circular systems for the things that we're using.
I guess just I'm going to finish off on this because the time has flown by and we're coming to the end already. But there's a few questions around how people can really, you know, they're recognizing the need to take action from what you said, but really where they focus their time and energy, what's the best method or the thing they should focus on. One person was asking about how they demand a citywide composting system. So that was a specific one maybe for you, Laurie. But yeah, what should we do? Should we write letters? Should we get on Twitter? Do we join the groups that Hannah was talking about? What do you think are the top hits?
I'll take any of those. But I think that pressure does need to come from all of us to be writing in and letting people know that we really want this. But I think the other challenge that we've got is that we do expect these things for free, but actually nothing's for free. And we have to understand that there's a price around everything. And the reason why the systems aren't there now is because the way that we think we have to pay for them isn't clear, or it's not clear how we're going to pay for it. And so in council's example, it'll be, if it's free, you're paying more rates. And so this is where it gets a little bit tricky. But yes, please come to council and tell us, please write, please email, please tweet, and please commit that you are very interested in having this service. But happy to hear from you individually as well.
I'm going to go to Nadi next, Bobby, and then to you.
Thanks, Laurie. I would add to that I think it's really important to recognise that whatever you do, whatever forum you choose to do it in, that there are two quite separate parts of that. And one is socially impacting. And so, you know, just call your mates out on it and ask questions of your suppliers and rant on social media, do all of those things. That's all important stuff. But recognise that there is a framework and structure to get your voice heard inside councils and governments. And it's not onerous and it's not intimidating, but if you look for that interaction and contribute to it, then your rant that was going to your 200 friends on Facebook then becomes heard in a forum that has got decision makers in it. And so stand up and make submissions, you know, put your submission in, even if the submission you're submitting on the, let's say the waste levy, and you are informed by something that Sustainability Trust has written, and you just go through and tick all the boxes because that helps to, that's the easy way to do it. That adds strength and weight to that noise in the forum that people are making decisions in. And we have a democracy. This framework exists. Don't be scared of it.
Great. Thanks, Nada. And we've got Hannah back too, which is great. But over to you, Bobby, to just tie up on that question.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just add a few things that I've witnessed and that I've been doing. So I guess find the other people that also sympathise or feel your problem and your values. This happens a lot. I'm very lucky to have a strong kind of community here in Wellington. And I guess Reusable was born exactly out of that. we had this problem, we faced it, we stopped eating all of our favorite food because, you know, there was waste being created and we couldn't take it away. So then a couple of friends and I got together and now formed a business out of it. So whether that be a business, a community organisation or whatever, or just a letter to the council, it's all really important. One thing that has been great is that when you start this, you meet so many others within the similar space and they push you along. A great one right now for Nada and I is Hannah. She's her with Takeaway Throwaways is lobbying government and councils all over New Zealand about exactly this, and are bringing the conversation to the fore and ensuring we're going to have a reusable future. That's incredible because both Again and Reusable couldn't have done that individually, and now with the like weight of them behind us, it's, you know, it's just provides that huge credibility. So, you know, everyone, there's going to be more than you that has the problem that you're facing. So make it known that you've got it, and then find the others that have it, and you'll find quite a cool few pathways to go down. Awesome, thanks everyone. We've got Millie from Upper Hutt City Council just added that she loves hearing from people and she can push up the decision-making chain. So yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm really sorry, but we have run out of time already. That has gone by really quickly. I just thank you all so much for your time and your advice and your vision. And I know it's been inspiring for me, and I'm sure it will be for everyone who's been listening in as well. It gives me kind of hope for us going forward. So I'm going to hand it back to you all just to give a quick top tip for us to finish off with. And I'm going to go to Hannah first, just in case we lose her again.
Sorry, Waiheke is notorious for the internet dropping out. And I'm gutted I missed what you all said. It all sounded very interesting. So my top tip is just to follow the waste hierarchy, which is the sassy 6 R's, wherever you can. And that is to refuse what you do not need, replace what you do need that might be wasteful with a non-wasteful alternative, reduce what you cannot refuse or replace, and then reuse whatever you can before you think about recycling, and whatever you're left with, you should be able to rot in a home compost. And so really the majority of zero waste activity happens at the refuse, replace top of the pyramid. And so think about what that means for you when you're out and about buying things as a consumer.
Awesome, thanks Hannah. Bobby next. I'm working my way back up the screen.
Cool. So my top tip would be just to select one essential item that you buy frequently, whether that be milk or soap or shampoo or whatever it is. Just select that and really dive deep into the information about it. Find out where it's come from, who makes it, and then actually find out if all of that information aligns with your values. If you agree with it all, that's great. You're buying the awesome stuff that aligns with your values. But if not, question it. Have a look around. What else can you do? Maybe even ask them if you're really worried. You're like, hey, that doesn't look right. Like Hannah was saying, follow those R's.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. Nada.
Mine's kind of a mixture of Bobby's and Hannah's. The most sustainable thing that you can own is the thing that you already own. So, you know, conscious consumerism is first and foremost about not buying stuff. And if you have to buy stuff, then push it back up the chain and demand of your suppliers that the stuff that you buy is the best that it can be in regards to your values.
Thanks, Nada. Laurie.
Yep, kia ora. Mine is become a conscious consumer household or a zero waste household. Put a sign on the door and say, you are welcome, but not with that. If you bring it in, you take it out. So just develop some kaupapa that might have a little bit of humor around it, but something that your whole household can get on board, because that way you're messaging out to all of your people that come to visit, which at the moment might not be very many.
Easier to control everyone at the moment.
Good time to try and be waste free for sure.
So thank you all again, all of you panelists, thank you, and all of you for tuning in as well. Just a reminder that the session is being recorded, so Hannah, you can tune back in for the bits you missed. And we will be posting it later on today or early next week with more resources. So any questions that we didn't get to, I promise you that those links will give you loads of advice on where to kind of take your next steps on your sustainability journey. So if I could just ask the attendees if you could leave the session now. Panelists, please stay with me. And ka kite.
Ka kite.